welcome to Innov'Nation. I'm your host, Lynn Plagmeijer, and thank you for joining us. Israel is one of the world's most water-scarce countries with less than 300 milliliters of rainfall per year in much of the country. But over the past century, this country has transformed deserts into productive farmland using innovative irrigation and climate-smart agriculture. Now, Israel is sharing this knowledge with the region. So for today's episode, we focus on regional climate change cooperation. But first, our headlines. Water shortages is one of the biggest challenges we face in this region. We speak to an organization that combines Jordanian, Palestinian, and Israeli environmentalists to protect shared natural resources and advance sustainable development. Olive oil is one of the staples of the Mediterranean diet, but what happens with the waste? An Israeli company has found a way to turn this waste into high-quality products. And we've been on the brink of war with Iran for weeks now. An Israeli company took matters into its own hands and built a new AI model that simulates the thinking of 122 IRGC commanders, and the results are clear. Now, water scarcity has long shaped life across the Middle East, and the crisis is intensifying. Rivers are shrinking, aquifers are under pressure, and rising temperatures are fueling drought. In response, organizations like EcoPeace Middle East are proving that cooperation over shared water is essential, bringing together Israeli, Palestinian, and Jordanian communities to tackle this urgent challenge. So for more on this, I'm now joined by Dani Reges, International Advocacy Officer of EcoPeace Middle East. So Dani, thank you very much for joining me today. You've been around since 1994. So tell us, what are the challenges we face today? How big is the crisis we are facing?
So the climate crisis that we are facing is quite large. And the situation is different since 94, when our organization EcoPeace Middle East was established. Whereas at the time, our founders started EcoPeace because they wanted to focus on the environment, because they thought that peace had broken out in our region at the time of the Oslo Accords and the peace agreement with Jordan. Unfortunately, over 30 years later, today, that has not entirely become the truth. And we are now working as much on peace building as we are on environmental issues to mitigate the climate crisis. One of the biggest things, as you were already saying, that the Middle East faces is that it has a large water shortage. In Jordan, for example, the second poorest water country in the world, the water only comes out of the people's homes tap maybe once every 10 or 12 days, which doesn't only affect people drinking the water, but it also affects everything that has to do with sanitation and with hygiene. Of course, also with industry, and think only about food security when we talk about agriculture that also needs the water as much, even though there's less going around due to the climate crisis. And of course, also population growth. Since 1994, when our organization was established, the population has doubled, which means that the needs for water have also doubled. But there's also good news, because Israel has relatively early been able, also because it's on the coast, to think about innovative solutions to counter its water crisis and create water from the sea. So we're talking about desalination, and Israel is the leading country in desalination and the technology, which means that they can produce water also at very cheap prices. And Israel right now is not necessarily drying out. Of course, this only counts for the next few years because our population is going to keep growing. There's going to be a need for more water, so there's more solutions to think of. But Israel can use these technologies and these advantages to expand and create peace and stability in the region by, for example, thinking about how to give that water, or not even give, also sell the water to Jordan in exchange for something else. And in Jordan's case, that could be renewable energy, because it has these vast deserts where it can produce renewable energy also at cheap prices, which Israel also will need. As we know, we need a lot more energy for our air conditionings and also for the industry. And think about the data centers that they want to build here that will also need a lot of energy.
So what are the Palestinian territories bringing into this deal?
So when we talk about this solution between a water and energy exchange between Jordan and Israel, which is actually a memorandum of understanding that has been signed between these countries in 2022, Palestine was not included in this deal. In the original idea that EcoPeace came up to have this exchange, Gaza, for example, was included with a large desalination plant that would also produce water that could be sold to Jordan, so that Jordans could also say that they weren't only buying water from Israel, but also from Palestine, and that the West Bank could enjoy buying the renewable energy at cheap prices from Jordan as well.
So do you, sorry to interrupt you, but do you think, because of the war happened, of course, did it change your work at all over the last 3 years? And do you think there's a new window for opportunity in the years to come, maybe also with Lebanon, maybe with Syria, maybe with Egypt?
Of course, any conflict affects peace-building work. I think that what I was just saying about the water energy exchange and the original agreement before October 7th excluded Palestine and Gaza. We believe that this war has provided a new opportunity, which is always what we are looking for the win-win solutions, to include Gaza again into this deal on the condition, of course, that there will be no terrorist organization running the place, so that it can be included in regional integration. This project of water energy exchange will create trust between companies, between countries, and also between people, which is in the end what we need to build peace. We don't only need an agreement between leaders, we also need support from our peoples. And once people see that this works in our 3 countries since the 7th of October, this will be a wonderful example, of course, of building on that and having more projects, also in Egypt, also in Lebanon, and also in Syria.
Well, we're curious to see how this plays out. We hope that more countries will join your cooperation soon. Dani Reges, International Advocacy Officer of EcoPeace Middle East. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, olive oil is a staple of the Mediterranean diet, but most of each olive is actually never used. Until now. One Israeli food tech startup says it has found a way to turn that leftover material into a new high-fiber food ingredient. Our host and correspondent, Nicole Tzedek, went to try it for herself.
Olive oil has been around for thousands of years, but most people don't realize that most of the olive never makes it into the oil. After pressing, the vast majority becomes waste.
Phenolive started with this idea that the olive oil industry has been around for 7,000 years. And for 7,000 years, it's had a problem, that they only use 15% of the olive to make olive oil. And the other 85% becomes waste.
So the question became, what if you could save that other 85% before it goes bad?
We actually developed a patented solution to stop the oxidation process of that waste.
Once olives are crushed, the leftover material oxidizes within 20 minutes and becomes hazardous.
As far as we know, we're the only company in the world that makes olive flour. We're the only company in the world that knows how to stop the oxidation process.
What they're making is olive flour, made from what used to be discarded after oil production.
What makes olive oil so healthy, right, is the polyphenols. And so our olive flour actually has 4 to 5 times the level of polyphenols that olive oil does. So that makes it super healthy. It's also very, very high in fiber. So it's 80% plus in the fiber, whereas most other gluten-free flours are going to be 0 to 10%. Very low sugar and has a neutral taste. So it can be used to make anything.
In simple terms, high fiber, high antioxidants, low carbs, and neutral enough to bake with. But the real shift here is not just nutrition, it's industry logic. In most olive mills all over the world, the leftovers go straight out of pipe into a waste tank.
There are about 25,000 olive oil mills in the world. 24,999 of them have a pipe that takes the waste out of the olive oil mill into some sort of tanks or reservoir where they get held until they can be disposed of. There's one olive oil mill, the one we're sitting in, that has a pipe that sends it to our system, and this gooey, smelly waste gets turned into olive flour like this instead.
That one mill is where this system is now installed.
Welcome to the Phenolhouse production line, the first commercial line that we've developed in the world. And here you can see the system where we both stop the oxidation of the olive oil waste and we turn it into olive flour.
A first-of-its-kind commercial line, built to run alongside normal olive oil production.
This is the starting point of the line. which the olives come into the line, which is separated from the leaves, and then going into those tanks. From here, we are taking them, pre-wash, washing them, and starting to process into the olive oil inside the building.
From there, the remaining waste runs through this pipe to get to the fat olives production line.
It goes through this process to dry the pulp, and then it gets sent up into there for cooling. And then what comes out of here is dry powder. While what enters is wet, smelly waste, at the end of our system, what comes out is dry powder that you can put your hand under and catch and even taste the meat.
And yes, you can bake with it, cook with it, and of course, eat it.
So we'll do a taste test with the olive flower. It's fantastic.
From a 7,000-year-old industry to a new food tech category, turning what used to be waste into a new ingredient and a new business model. Nicole Zedek for I-24 News.
Now, from the waste of olive oil, we move on to harvesting the power of the sun. Israel's energy tech sector is betting on a coating that uses the sun's energy to cool surfaces instead of heating them. SolCold says its light-activated material could slash the need for traditional air conditioning, a potential game-changing solution for cities getting hotter every year. So for more, I'm now joined by Yaron Shenhav, CEO and co-founder of SolCold. So Yaron, thank you very much for being with us today. How exactly does your material work?
Well, the material itself is like a film, okay, like a big sticker, like a wallpaper, something very, very thin, and it can be very, very wide. And it uses three mechanisms, all coming from physics, inside the material, inside the sticker. The three mechanisms are one, reflective, so just like pretty much like you can imagine a white paint, right? Mm-hmm. We try to lower the amount of energy that is heating up the material. But inside of our coating materials, it's made of layers. Inside of it, you have nanoparticles that are actually using the sunlight in a process called anti-Stokes fluorescence or upconversion. That means that they are absorbing the photons coming from the sunlight, and in the process of jumping on energy level and then crashing back in a matter of nanoseconds to a lower position, they are emitting higher energy photon, or in other words, they are always pumping out the energy, the heat from within and emitting that as light that we can actually see. In the process of it, the material is actually generating an active cooling power. You can actually measure it, something between 90 to 170 watts per square meter. Temperature-wise, it is dropping down temperature below the temperature of its surrounding, the temperature of the air, by approximately on the peak hours of the day, at noontime in summertime, by 5 to 6 degrees subambient.
Okay, so how you say 5 to 6 degrees? What are the most warm cities in the world, and in Israel maybe? And how do you think, how much energy does this realistically save, like on a year basis or a month basis?
Well, in terms of energy saving, I mean, we have several projects already deployed and measured globally. So in hot places, in very hot places and slightly hot places. And we see that pretty much the same thing, always between 30% reduction in power consumption, 30%, all the way to 60%. That's what we see. Now, in terms of where are these kind of solution is adequate to, well, of course, we are only targeting the sun belt of the world. And unfortunately, I would say, global warming or extreme heat waves that occur often, more and more often, are pretty much my friend. Mm-hmm. So because of them, we see a lot of demands. Every summer, we see that even cold areas like for France, for example, or in the middle of Europe, they approach us and then, listen, we really, really need this kind of solution. What can we do? Mm-hmm. And then business are booming in summertime.
But how does it measure then with, for instance, solar panels? Because they harvest the power of the sun to gain energy. You're basically doing something different because you're using it to cool down. Yeah. How does it relate to each other?
Oh, it's a long story, mm-hmm. I would say. Well, solar panels are indeed taking the solar energy and generate electricity out of it, and we're taking the solar energy and generate cooling out of it. Now, if you're If your aim is actually to cool down the object, then it is much better way to do that with so-called, instead of taking a solar panel, converting it to electricity, and from that converting it into power for air conditioning. In that process, you're saving much more energy, way much more energy with us. I would say, though, that we have, for example, project now that is coming on in Brazil on a solar field, solar panel field. That in this specific project, we're actually using the immense amount of photons that we are emitting from our material to actually generate more electricity in this solar farm. So cooling down the material also, but also because of all the light being absorbed again in the solar panels, they are generating 21% more electricity than without us.
Wow, very interesting. Okay, so cooling down, but gaining energy at the same time.
So we can do both.
Amazing. Yaron Shenhav, CEO and co-founder of SoulCall, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Now, stepping away from climate change, because in a deal that underscores the growing global appetite for Israeli defense technology, Israeli drone maker Extend is poised to go public through a $1.5 billion merger with a US firm, creating a Nasdaq-listed AI robotics company backed by high-profile investors like Eric Trump. Joe Brown has the story.
It's an Israeli company which has the backing of Eric Trump, the son of the United States president, and it's going to be listed on the Nasdaq index. This is Extend. It is an Israeli drones company, and this is going to be merging with a business that's already listed on the Nasdaq called JFB Holdings. And because of the merger, it is now going to be listed as a public company. In the terms of the agreement, Extend will take 70% of the company, whereas JFB will have 30%, and the valuation of it is quite high, $1.5 billion. But once you break it down, it's easy to understand why. Extend was founded in 2018 in Tel Aviv, and it is a drone company that focuses on artificial intelligence using unmanned aerial systems to improve the defense systems of countries such as Israel, where it is in use by the IDF, and the United States, where it has also been deployed. As we have seen over the last 3 years, Israeli defense systems have been able to keep up with quite a lot of things that have come its way from Gaza, from Hezbollah, and most impressively, the ballistic missiles that have come from Iran, most of which have arrived with very limited damage on the Israeli land itself, and that's why it's in such high demand from around the world. If you look at the big three in the Israeli defense tech, that is IAI, Rafael, and Elbit, over the financial year from 2024 to 2025, they made $16 billion of revenue. This accounts for 3% of the Israeli GDP. And Extend, which will be changing its name to Extend AI Robotics, will be looking to extend on that amount to help the Israeli economy.
Now, deal or no deal? That's the questions that's been on our minds for the past few weeks when it comes to another war with Iran. Now, an Israeli AI startup has peered inside the minds of Iran's top commanders, and their synthetic profiles reveal a startling consensus. The Islamic Republic's future, they say, belongs to a military strongman and not the clergy. So for more, I'm now joined by Neil Tsur, CTO and co-founder of AskIt. So, Neil, thank you very much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's a very interesting concept that you've created because you went into the minds of 122 IRGC generals, and you have figured out how they think. So can you explain to us how does it work exactly?
Sure. So always start with a physics analogy. So I think the best way is to think about a river. The single molecule to predict its movement is really hard. You need a lot of information. It's almost impossible, very random. But at the level of the entire river, it's much more predictable. Because of the interaction between molecules, it creates kind of shared patterns. So this aligns perfectly with actually how humans behave. So we are really random in a way, but when we are in a group, we have much more shared patterns. So that's exactly what we do in AskIt. We basically create synthetic humans or audiences that their shared patterns, their aggregate behavior aligns with the real audience behavior. So this is kind of the basics. And then we should say to ourselves, let's test, like we're already testing out there, but let's ask questions of people that we would never be able to ask, which is the IRGC generals.
Yes, because we have no idea what's going on there, Mike, but you figured it out. So what exactly did you ask these generals and what did they say?
All right. So I think the top thing that we found, you already mentioned that the clergy, this model of the senior religious clerk as the next in line, right? It's kind of dead in our survey of them.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because we would think it's a religious guy.
Right. And the second thing that we found is that 69% of them said, okay, IRGC generals. 29% of them talked about Khamenei's son. It's interesting to see that for Khamenei's son, they actually looked at it as a dynasty, as a stable way of going forward for Iran, as a new path for Iran. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, for the IRGC general as the next in line, more about the abilities to push Iran to handle, their crisis. Because if you think about it, you have the war with Israel in June, you have the unrest in January, so all these kind of things really unstable the regime, and they going for this kind of a solution. So it's two ways of thinking of the future. And maybe I'll finish with, I have a few more, but I'll finish with another one about should they build a nuclear bomb?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's important.
Yeah. And it's interesting, 89% of them said, yeah, build it. But it's interesting to see that the reason for building this, it's not just simple strategies, it's actually emotional. They align themselves with things that relate to the Iraq-Iran war, of what happened there in terms of them being regular soldiers in this almost, I think, a decade worth of war. So it's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
There's a few more, but let's see.
No, it's very interesting because basically they're just tooting their own horn. Basically, the IRGC, what you found is that they want a nuclear bomb, they want a military guy, probably one of their own to succeed Khamenei. Did you also ask if there's going to be a war?
So no, I didn't ask. We didn't have time for this. I should maybe mention two other things. First, that we were really surprised by the fact that there was some religious reasoning, but it wasn't really the main thing. So at the end of the day, they went to very specific, very handling the situation, then religion as the source of truth and way of solving this. And I think I forgot what's else, but yeah, I think.
But it's interesting to figure out their thought pattern through AI. So thank you very much for being with us today, Neil Tsur, CTO and co-founder of Askit.
Thank you.
Now to China, because it's the Chinese New Year, the year of the fire horse. In this year, things tend to move quickly. It's a year of breaking patterns and pushing people or societies into bold changes. One of these bold changes are the robots doing kung fu that were introduced at the country's annual Spring Festival Gala earlier this week. So for more, I'm now joined by Jody Natelevitz, our I24 News correspondent. Tell us about these robots.
Yes, so this was China's Lunar New Year broadcast. Think Super Bowl level viewership, but it's humanoid robots performing synchronized martial arts. And now there wasn't just for entertainment. China is very intentionally showing off how progressed it is in the race for the global humanoids. The company that built these robots is positioning itself alongside other competitors like Tesla, which are doing similar things. And these robots aren't just meant for show or entertainment. They're actually going to be in factories and assisting in the home and with logistics. So it may look like a giant tech talent show, but it was also a message. China wants to show that it's leading the AI humanoid robot race at this point.
Yeah, because you also really don't want to be hit by one of these robots while they're performing their kung fu dances. Staying in China, because they have another robot who looks creepily human.
Yes, lifelike skin, facial expressions, eyes that track you, and it's triggering something called uncanny valley. And that's a term for when a robot looks really human, but something's missing and it makes us feel really uncomfortable. It does all these things that are really human, but there's just enough artificial stiffness that your brain's like, okay, something's really weird here. And
But this is actual footage because I'm looking at the screen now. This is insane.
Yes.
Okay, that's terrifying. Yes.
So the designers say that they want this robot to be very hyper-realistic because it can make us feel better about dealing with a robot, especially in terms of human care and customer service. But I mean, I don't think it makes it easier to deal with. It might actually make it worse for some of us, especially because humans are really psychologically sensitive to when facial expressions, and it can actually come off really eerie rather than friendly.
Yes, I totally agree. This is scaring the hell out of me. Jody Natelevitz, thank you for joining me. Neil Tsur, thanks you again for joining me. And that's all we have time for today. Of course, we wish you a very happy new year. Year of the horse. Don't let all that fire burn you out. I'm Lim Plagmeijer. Join me next week.